years ago, when I first started my doctor program in UK, my parents were thrilled. Even though it's just a part-time doctor of business administration, not exactly the kind of doctor that saved people, but still, they were proud of me. You know, Chinese parents. But then as year goes by, I was becoming a pro of procrastination in turning in my thesis. Their hope diminished. My mom came to me one day and said, "You know, we're getting old. Maybe we will never live to see you graduate." You know, Chinese parents, they always say something to make us feel bad and hoping we will somehow get motivated. Last month, after 7 years of procrastinating, I finally turned in my thesis, passed, and became a doctor. I was thrilled, and I called my mom, and she said, "You know, the war against Japanese aggression only took 8 years." You know, Chinese parents, they're just hard to impress. But that actually got me fascinated on the topic of procrastination. And I wanted to know why people procrastinate, and more importantly, how can we cure it? But before we get into that, let's just get the definition straight. So what is procrastination? Procrastination is the tendency of delaying the initiation or the completion of an important task to the point of discomfort. It is knowing what is supposed to be done, wanting to do it, but still fail to do it within the expected time frame. Now, if you're saying you're putting things off by choice without feeling guilty or anxiety, then that is not procrastination. So with that definition, can I see a show of hands who experienced that? Okay, I guess for those people who didn't raise their hands, they're just too procrastinated to do so. So, if procrastination causes such discomfort and anxiety, why do we still do it? Well, according to my initial research, there are many reasons, from lack of self-discipline to simply being lazy, from lack of motivation to instant satisfaction. When I look at this long list, I think it all makes sense. It's not just one problem. It doesn't fully explain why I procrastinated. Because, come on, for someone who managed to get this far in my career, I'm not lazy. And for all of you who managed to get through ISB study to this far, I bet you're not that lazy. So, a lot of friends I know of who are highly successful people are also procrastinators. And one of them is Dr. Condoleezza Rice. When I first read it in her biography, that not only she procrastinated when she was at school, she is still a procrastinator till today. And I was shocked because you guys know that not only she is a former Secretary of State, she's also a Stanford graduate, a professor at Stanford, and a professional pianist. So it just happens that 2 weeks after I read this, I had a lunch meeting with her somewhere near Summer Palace. And I wanted to ask her in person, how can someone as achieved as you also procrastinate? But unfortunately, I was too procrastinated to ask. So I went on and did my own research because I figured if we know why successful people procrastinate, then we probably can find the cure. So here's what I find out. Number one, successful people are busy. They are always running out of time. For example, when I was doing my doctorate degree, I was also leading a global team at Motorola. I was running, I was actually serving on the board of American Chamber of Commerce. I was raising a boy at ISB. And last year, I even applied to be a board of trustee at ISB. And thanks God, you guys didn't like me. Because otherwise I would be even more procrastinated. So because we're busy and it seems like our life is running in parallel tracks, what do? We multitask. And contrary to what people think, multitasking does not increase productivity. In fact, multitasking is the #1 productivity killer. And let me explain to you why. For example, I was supposed to be reading this literature as part of my doctoral study, but it is too boring, too difficult. They're not even written in human language. So what do? I turn around, I started to read some work email, even though it is as boring, but at least it's not as difficult. So as I was doing that, my mind is telling me, so Lin, you're not lazy, you're busy working. And then as I complete my work email, I got the satisfaction of completion, but that actually hides the fact that I didn't do the work I was supposed to be doing. So multitasking gives successful people a perfect, legitimate excuse for avoiding the more difficult task. #2, successful people are also ambitious. They set goals, and not just any goals. They set ambitious goals. I remember when I first started my doctoral program, my professor told us, you guys just write 150 words a day. And even if you don't like half of it, you still end up with 75 words. And I was sitting there thinking, you could do much better than that. Give me a dedicated week. I could easily knock off 1,000 words because I am an overachiever. But guess what? I never had a dedicated week. Not even a dedicated day. So after 7 years and completed total 100,000 words of thesis, I did a calculation on how many words I wrote on average. 40 words a day. And had I listened to my professor to write 150 words and throw away half, I would still be able to complete my degree in 4 years instead of 7. So I aimed high and I ended low. And now you see how successful people perfectly turn themselves into successful procrastinators. But if that's the case, why do they still do it? Don't they know better? Well, that brings to my last point. Because successful people usually are talented, like all of you students. And you can always manage to get things done, eventually. And that's why some people would argue there's really no need to cure procrastination. Isn't there a saying that deadline is the #1 productivity driver? Don't you just sometimes have to feel the pressure that comes with deadline in order to get started? Well, I used to believe in that too. But after procrastinating for 7 years, I no longer buy into that story. Because think about this. How many 7 years do you have in life? In 7 years, some of you are going to be in my age. That's kind of a scary thought, isn't it? And I will be my mom's age. That's even more scary. So we don't have a lot of 7 years to procrastinate. And even though you're talented, that you can win it at the end, to the point that people didn't know that you procrastinated to the last minute to start, but you know better than anyone else that you could have done better had you not procrastinate. And you're selling yourself short. And over time, it's going to eat away your potential and fill yourself with regret and shame. And out of all the negative feelings that human beings have, shame is the most damaging one. Shame left me powerless. So yes, procrastination has to go. But how? Have you been given give an advice like this? Just do it. Well, if I know how to do it, I would. The problem is I don't, and that's why it becomes, just do it tomorrow. So I am an executive coach. When clients come to me for a problem, I don't give useless advice like this. That's not coach. That's called mom. I help them with a set of tools so that they can find their own solutions. And one of the most useful tools that I use is called the logical level of change, which is based on a neurolinguistic programming. The whole idea is just like what Albert Einstein said, that we cannot solve problems using the same thinking that we created them. So for example, my mom was nagging me about, when are you going to turn your thesis, right? Well, if I know what to write and how to write it, I would have done it. The problem is I don't, right? So that's why I procrastinated, I multitasked, I set ambitious goals, but going nowhere. Not until I ask myself the deep question, why? Why am I doing that at this point of my career and my life? Is it just because I wanted the doctor title? Yes, to some degree. When I was being announced in as Dr. Lin Gao, I feel like I'm 1 inch taller. But is that all? No. I want to be someone who has original thinking, who has original ideas, and ideas that worth spreading. And that's why I do it. And part of figuring out who you are becoming is also to accept who you are. And for me, who grew up in a Chinese educational system, whose English is second language, who could hardly spell what critical thinking is, doing that doctor thing was hard for me. And I didn't want to accept it. And I wanted to be the overachiever. But I can't. So as soon as I accept who I am, figuring out the why, everything else just flows. So I wanted to show you quickly how students and parents can also use this to self-coach yourself. So say, for example, Wilson, he comes to me in 2 years and asks me, so I know I need to do this SAT preparation. I know I need to do it, I want to do it, but I just don't feel like doing it. What should I do? And then I would turn around and I would ask him, so what do you think you should do? And then he will probably say, well, last year I heard this TED talk from Dr. Lin Gao, and then she said, perhaps I should stop multitasking. So then he figured out the what. And then I might ask him, so how are you going to take the first step? Because, you know, procrastinators, to them, the most difficult thing is to take that first step. Once they take it, they can actually go on. So I would ask him, so how are you going to take the first step? And then perhaps Daniel would say, perhaps I could stop running this hero and overachiever story in my head and just start small. Rather than aiming SAT 1600, perhaps I could aim 1580. And suppose he gets started, but then somehow he got stuck again. Now this is where he needs to take a deep breath and ask himself, why? Why is he doing an SAT? Why is it so important to him? Is it just because his mom said so? Probably not. There's got to be more than that. And the more is actually who. He needs to ask himself, who am I becoming? And I just asked him that question backstage. He's still trying to figure out. So you see, by figuring out the who and the why, that's how we can cure procrastination. And I know for all of you parents sitting here tonight, you, as much as you want to give them the how and the what advice, please leave that for the children to figure out, for the students and for the school to help out. Your number one job is to help them find out the why and support them to become the who, because ultimately we're counting on them to make this world a better place. Thank you.